Okay, hello, and here we are with Shanti Johnson of the Missoula, that's Montana, Urban Transportation System? Missoula
Yeah,
Urban
district.
Transportation District, right? So Shanti Johnson of the Missoula Urban Transportation District operating Mountain Lion. I see the imagery behind you is gorgeous mountain scenery. So we're here to twofold purpose, to do a city walkability rating, but also to learn more about something very special you have in your city, which is a zero fare program for public transit,
Yeah,
correct? Yeah.
correct. Yeah.
Okay, let's dive into it. And I think it would be great just to get the basics. So we'll do 4 W's: where, when, what, and who. So let's start with where you are. Can you just share with
Yeah.
listeners?
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. So I am based in Missoula, Montana, which is in the western part of the United States. And Missoula is the second largest city in Montana. But in comparison to other large cities, it's still quite small. Our population is just over 100,000 people. I work for Mountain Line. I do communications and outreach, and Mountain Line is our public transportation system. So we operate 12 routes, about 70 square miles, and all of our services are zero fare, which means that people don't have to pay to ride. And that applies to our fixed route buses like the one behind me, and it also applies to our other services like our ADA accessible paratransit service and something we offer that we call shuttle van, which is for our senior riders.
Okay, so shuttle van is for senior. Is it also for those mobility impaired?
Paratransit is for those who are unable to take fixed route. Yeah,
Okay,
and all of those services are zero fare.
okay, that's amazing. So shuttle van is for seniors. And what was it? Paratransit?
Para,
Para.
P-A-R-A,
Oh,
paratransit.
paratransit for
Mhm.
mobility impaired. That's incredible. So when was this rolled out?
So Mountain Line did this in a really unique way that I have not seen any other agency do across the world. And it started with this idea from our mayor who thought, it'd be really great if we could make public transportation more accessible for our community. Because we know accessible public transit is not only benefiting people from getting from point A to point B, but it's also making it a more livable place to live. It's increasing accessibility for those who might be living on a fixed income. It's helping to create a more equitable community. And it's giving that impetus for those that we call choice riders, which maybe have another option like a private vehicle. It's giving them that inspiration, hopefully, to be like, it's free. I should try taking the bus. So he had this idea and worked with our general manager starting in 2013. And what they did was they went out into the community and they said, hey, what do you think about zero fare? And our community went, no, we don't want that.
Mhm.
And the leadership behind this idea was like, no, I think this is a really great idea. And we just need to show people what this could be like for them. Like, I don't think that our community grasps how awesome this is going to be, and we need to show them. And so what they decided to do was this unique demonstration project. And what they did was they went out to community partners like our hospitals. We have 2 major hospitals in Missoula who were already paying for fare passes for their employees to take the bus. They went to things like the University of Montana that were paying for students to ride for free. Some of our private organizations that had sustainability or accessibility goals. And they said, hey, you're already invested in either paying for transportation or these accessibility goals that public transportation supports. Would you be willing to kick in financially to demonstrate to our community that we can operate fare free and it will benefit us all? And so we originally signed up 14 community partners that contributed different levels of finances, depending on how big they were and what they could swing. And we launched our zero fare pilot project in 2015. So
Okay.
with the pilot, do you want me to keep going? I can keep going
Sure.
if you want.
Yeah. Keep going.
Okay.
Well, I have a question. What
Yeah.
were the hiccups? What were the hiccups, if any, in the beginning, or the bumps in the road? Were there any besides the initial resistance of community?
Well, it took a lot of time. This was really an individual conversation with every single partner of looking at, what are our shared goals? How does this not only benefit our community, but benefit your goals as an organization? And really making sure that it was aligned, that we were both in this project for the greater good of our community. And it took a lot of persuasion and a lot of time in offices and talking to CEOs and business owners and presidents of universities it was not an easy scale up. It took a lot of time.
Okay. And that's interesting that the community also, what were some of the reasons that the community wasn't interested?
Well, this was before my time. And so, the understanding that I have is so in Montana, it's a unique situation. We don't have any tax except for property tax. So if there's anything that a public organization wants to do, it's going to increase tax on property owners. And there's a huge burden because there's no sales tax or tourism tax or anything else to spread that out. And so, by and large, the initial reaction of any increased request in Montana is no, we don't want to increase property taxes. And so you really have to make the case for why it's still going to benefit the entire community, but also this individual taxpayer. Like, why is it worth investing in this project? And what are you going to get back from that? And so it's a hard burden of proof in Montana. So, when we established this program and launched it, we were thinking, okay, in an ideal situation, our ridership is going to increase, right? And maybe by like 30%, maybe if we're really lucky, 40%. And we were blown away. Like in the first 3 years of zero fare, our ridership increased 70%. And it went up to an average of 1.5 million rides annually. And in the beginning, I mentioned Missoula is just over 100,000 people. So when you think about 1.5 million rides, and that's just on our fixed route system, that doesn't include all of our paratransit or shuttle van rides, that's significant. And we did a poll and we asked riders within that first 3 years, like, why are you riding? And almost half of them said because of zero fare, either totally because of zero fare or more often because of zero fare. And then we saw other ramifications with, individuals who are living on a fixed income, whether those are seniors or those with disabilities or living on low income, where they were able to engage more in our community. It wasn't a choice of what am I going to spend bus fare just to go to my essential services like the grocery store and the doctor, and I can't go to downtown events or out to, the library or these community just for fun things. And by alleviating that barrier, we're able to see more people participating, taking rides, and engaging in life in Missoula, which I think makes it more vibrant.
Oh, I absolutely love that. You're really setting a great example, and I'm thrilled to hear about you. You predicted my question, or you just already answered it. I was going to ask, what is the impact in ridership? What was that again? The first 3 years?
Yeah, it
Ridership
increased
increase?
70%.
So between
Almost 70%. I think it was like 68 or 69. Yeah.
So it was rolled out in 2015, and between 2015 and 18, ridership increased 70% in Missoula. That's incredible. That's so incredible.
It exceeded all of our projections. Absolutely.
And it's going strong.
Yeah.
It's going strong still.
Yeah. So something to maybe talk about more is we did this in such a unique way. And when we did this with the partners, we said, hey, will you sign on for a 3-year demonstration project? And it was so successful that we wanted to continue it, right? And so we went back to our partners and we said, hey, like, here's all of this amazing success we've seen. Are you willing to renew for another 3 years? And we brought on additional partners. So when we started, we had, I think, 14 partners. And in 2018, we grew our partners to 26, and we added more private partners. We'd had a lot of public or nonprofit entities invest in the first 3 years. We were able to add, like we had a couple of real estate agencies join us, and the Good Food Store, which is a food store here that's focused on sustainability, and that met their goals. So we grew our partnerships and renewed for another 3 years. We saw ridership stay about the same at that 1.5 million average. We didn't see any big increase beyond that, but that was still a significant increase. And we got to this point where this is our 7th year of zero fare, and it was never meant to be an in perpetuity model. It was always meant to be a demonstration project. As a public agency, like, I'm not set up to be a fundraiser. That's, we don't have that nonprofit model. And when we signed up some of our additional partners in 2018, we started to get asked, okay, well, what else is in this for me? And so we ended up making this almost like sponsorship level of, okay, if you're coming in at this level, like, we'll put you on, our social media X number of times thanking you, and we'll put an ad in the paper saying thank you. So we had to beef out a little bit of what our partners were getting. And as we were entering our 7th year, we're also experiencing a pandemic. And some of our partners are tourism based or business based, and they were really impacted by the economic ramifications of shutting down for a while. And so if these businesses are looking at keeping an employee versus keeping their zero fare contribution at X number of thousands of dollars, well, that's not, they're going to keep their employee. And looking at, hey, I signed up as this demonstration project, I didn't sign up to be contributing for the rest of our life, essentially. And so we started to have really good conversations, kind of tangentially with this, and I don't want to get too in the weeds. But we, as a public agency, we have to go out for strategic planning every 5 years or so. And that's where we go out into our community and we say, hey, like, what do you want for the future of Mountain Line? What's going well? What are you liking? What would you like to see changed? We gather all this feedback and we put together our strategic plan of what is the next step we're going to do. And so in 2018, we did this and we heard from our community, we want more service. We currently don't operate on Sundays. And we have limited hours on Saturdays. We heard we want 7-day service. We want more evening service and earlier morning service. And so we put together this big plan. And the natural culmination in that timeline was to go to voters in 2020 and ask for a mill levy increase to put expanded service on the road. So this is all happening at the same time, right? Where we're getting ready to go to the ballot box with this initiative. We're entering a pandemic, which is unprecedented. We're also ending our agreement with our zero fare partners. Like, we need to renew or figure out what we're going to do next. And so all of this kind of came to a head, and we did some polling in our community to say, hey, should we even be asking for a funding increase in 2020 with the world being so unknown and crazy? What do you love about Mountain Line? And the top points of community pride were zero fare and our electric buses, which an electric bus is what's behind me. And so that was really, I think, just so gratifying and humbling at the same time that we could come from, no, I don't want zero fare in 2013 to asking, what is the thing you love most? Zero fare being a point of community pride. And we asked, if we took it away or brought fares back, and everyone's like, no, we want to keep zero fare in perpetuity. And because of this positive community feedback, we decided to go for it in November of 2020, go to the ballot, ask for a mill levy increase to put expanded service on the road. But the secondary ask was, can we bring zero fare under our operating budget? Meaning, can we use taxpayer money to support this program? And our initiative won by a 20% margin, which was significant. It's the largest yes increase margin that we've had in a decade for a tax increase request.
Okay, wow, fantastic.
That's a lot of information.
I'm taking a lot of notes, don't worry. And we're gonna publish this video, but then maybe get some pictures from you of the buses,
Sure,
and the commutes. I mean, it sounds great. So I think you've referenced this already through the talk. Well, first of all, as you referenced the pandemic, we're now in 2022. Are you seeing a bit of a change? I mean, I know public transit has taken a hit through the pandemic, but is ridership coming back slowly?
We're really spot on with national trends. In the United States, most agencies are sitting at about between 60 and 70% of normal, at least the numbers that I've seen of normal ridership, and we're right there. We're about 65% of what we were in 2019. So we've seen ridership come back, but not fully return on our fixed route. On our paratransit service, that was growing very rapidly before the pandemic. And then we saw a large dip, just like everything, but it has actually exceeded 2019 numbers. So our ADA accessible service has returned beyond what it was in 2019.
Okay, interesting. It'll be interesting. I'm very hopeful for you guys that it'll pick up in the coming years, as I am with any city, but I'm really excited.
We're trying to figure out how has it changed. Where are riders going? Are they staying at home? What are the patterns?
Right. So I think it would be fun to get into what we call a city walkability rating, where people rate their city's walkability, public transit, and cycling. I had to pause there because I'm like, of course you work for the agency. I hope it's going to be sometimes tricky when people work in mobility, especially for their cities, but I think you have a really rich, broad view, of course, also as a resident and user of city spaces and services. So it'll be really interesting, I think, to hear your perspective on Missoula. You're the first one we've done for Missoula, the first person we talked to. Yeah. So Missoula represent, I'll let you pick which one you want to start with.
Okay, out of like biking, walking, and busing, is that what you
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Sure. Well, why don't we start with biking?
Okay.
And so I just need to give a 0 to 10 rating of
So we
how
do scale
bikeable.
of 1 to 10. 1 is the lowest,
Yeah.
10 is the highest.
Okay, I would say we're really high on that scale. I would put us at like a 7 or 8. And there's a couple of reasons. Our valley is really flat. And so there's a lot of ease as far as like, accessibility. You don't have to be a strong biker to get places like you might in like San Francisco where there's all the hills.
Right.
And our city's invested in a lot of infrastructure. So we have a lot of protected bike lanes. They've recently updated some significant corridors with off-street bike lanes, so they're more protected as well.
Okay. Awesome. And there sounds like there's probably a pretty hardy bike culture there too.
There is. Yeah,
Good.
we have people who bike even in the dead of winter. They make their own like studded snow tires, like on things like this icy road behind me. You will see bikers out and about. Yeah,
Okay.
it's
So
very bikeable.
what would need to change for you to bring your score up to a 9-10?
There are still some areas of Missoula that there might be biking protected lanes on two sides of like a major corridor, but there's no way to get across the corridor. So for example, where I live in a more rural part, but not that far away from downtown. I have an off-street protected, bike and pedestrian lane, and then it disappears. And I don't get to connect with another bike lane until I've crossed a significant corridor where there's no pedestrian or multimodal infrastructure. And so that's intimidating for me as a biker. So I don't often bike because of that.
Right. I understand that. It's the same in a lot of communities. Okay. So what are you going to choose next?
We'll leave busing for last. I'll do walkability.
Okay. Okay.
So the same thing, like I think we're a really walkable city. I would put that at a 6. And the reason I would put it lower than biking is because we have a lot of neighborhoods that don't have sidewalks. Or they don't have curb cuts, like for those who are using mobility devices or might have issues with stepping. We are definitely seeing our city take that seriously. We have a couple sidewalk projects that are launching this summer. In the heart of our city, I would say like 10. It's so walkable. It's wonderful. As you get into neighborhoods, I would put that down to a 6.
Okay. Yeah, that's always interesting to distinguish because the heart of the city can be so different from the peripheral. And of course, we're keeping in mind the holistic area. So it's interesting to know that difference. Okay, now we're rounding off. Yes. Yeah.
In the city, I would put busing at a 7. We have high frequency routes in the city, which come every 15 minutes during the weekday. I think starting in July, when we put expanded service on the road, where we're operating more frequently and 7 days a week, I would bump that up to an 8 or a 9 in our city. We are working to make more of our bus stops accessible. So all of our vehicles, including our fixed route buses, are accessible, but not all of our bus stops are. And some of that correlates with not having great pedestrian infrastructure in some of our neighborhoods, right? So we put a bench in the dirt. If you use a mobility device, that stop is not accessible to you. So we have been working to increase accessibility. In our larger area, so Missoula is a really unique spot in that it has a dense urban population, but a lot of our residents live in the outskirts of town. And so as a public transportation agency, we're always almost competing against these goals of frequency. So it's convenient and very busable versus access. Like how far away can you get? Like if you're in East Missoula, can you still get to downtown? Mm-hmm. And so in these larger rural areas, the bus is only coming every hour. And that really decreases the convenience for people who have alternate modes of transportation. And so I would say it's probably about a 5 or a 6 in those areas.
Mm-hmm. Understand that. Yeah. Interesting. So you pretty much listed all the things that you need to see for your score to come up for public transit. So expanded services, more accessible bus stops for those using mobility devices, mm-hmm. and so forth.
Yeah, and we have a lot of that in the works. The biggest factor for us that's going to limit increasing that score any higher is that we're literally out of space. So we're operating out of a facility that was built in the 80s. And if you can think about, just population growth between the 80s and 2022, especially in a town like Missoula that has really boomed in the last couple of decades, we're just literally out of space. So all of the expanded services we're putting on the road correlate to existing service. We're just adding more of our existing service. We're not actually adding new area coverage. And that's because we can't purchase any more vehicles. We have nowhere to put them. We're at a capacity with staff. We employ about 100 people. And if you were to see our office, it's like, I don't even know how to quantify the square footage of it, but it's shocking to think that we have 100 people in a place that has, I think, like 8 offices upstairs and 4 downstairs. Like, it's so tiny.
Right.
And so really with this new infrastructure package that happened in the United States, we're looking at this urgency of taking advantage of that. But with a growing urban development, it's hard to find land. And we can find land far away, but then that's, really increasing our costs just to get the buses into service areas. So that's our biggest challenge right now, is finding land and building a new facility so we can actually add more service to our community.
Okay, for housing Mountain Line, or for housing also the staff of Missoula Urban
for our
Transport.
staff and for our buses and for electric infrastructure. So we are committed to transitioning to a zero tailpipe emissions fleet by 2035. Right now, Montana doesn't have a ton of infrastructure for alternate modes of transportation like natural gas or hydrogen, but we do have the ability to plug in our buses. So we've been transitioning to electric. Our fixed route fleet is 40% electric right now. And we are rapidly transitioning, but to charge an electric bus, you have to be able to physically park it next to a charger, and you have to be able to put these big converters that route to like you would see with an electric car, a little handle, and that takes space. Right. And so we have space to add, I think, about 5 more electric buses, but after that, we won't be able to do that either. So it's also impacting just our transition to a more sustainable fleet.
It's not attractive to relocate to a somewhat more rural area outside of the urban setting. It's all possible.
I mean, that might be what we have to do. The downfall of that is it's going to increase our operating costs somewhere in the neighborhood of $500,000 a year, just because we have to pay for people to drive the bus into service before we can ever pick up passengers. And so it's really not the best use of our time and our resources, both labor and money. The closer we can be to downtown, the more we can use those resources to provide service versus just getting people into the service area.
Is there a plot of land or structure in town that you kind of have your eyes on?
We've been talking with the city. So Mountain Line, the Missoula Urban Transportation District, is its own special district. So we don't work under the city or the county, but we obviously serve residents of both. So we work closely with them. So the city's main priority is affordable housing. We have been booming in the last couple of years and do not have enough housing for just meeting demand, but also affordability. And so making sure that connection between access to accessible public transportation and affordability is strong, because they go hand in hand.
Right.
And so the city has made some plans to purchase land to build affordable housing, but we're hoping we can be part of that new development for a new facility.
I hope so too. I'm so excited hearing about everything you're doing. I look forward to hearing about developments. I'm going to stay in touch with you. We look forward to publishing this, maybe alongside some photos, because I think it'd be so interesting to see more of Missoula as well from your perspective. So thank you, Shanti, very much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.